But yeah, the basic thing today is the first hour, I'm going to be showing off the LAN save at the end of the LAN party. So I went to the LAN party, pre-release, and we were in a team. I'll talk about it later. This is the save file that we had that was very close to the end of the game. It's not the final. I'm going to load up one that was not the final one, because the final one we all went to Aquilo and basically tried to break the game. Absolutely everyone joined into a single server, and we were all spamming, making ice and all this sort of stuff. It didn't crash. I mean, it got really, really massively laggy, but the game did not crash, which was quite impressive, actually. In particular, focusing on Gleba, because they changed Gleba quite a bit between the LAN party and the release version. So you can see the version as it was in the LAN party. So if we flip over to game capture, then you can hear what I can hear. So this is obviously the pre-release version of the game. Up here, this is basically 1.2.21. If I open the about as well, 1.2.21, which was just after the LAN party. But you see that we got the science, I don't know, science A, but and that's like importing all of the sciences and effectively taking them all to Gleba. So they kind of relocated science to Gleba because of the whole spoilage thing. We actually had two devs on the team, Fergal and Strangeman, basically. And they kind of heroically stayed on Nauvis and turned it into an actual proper base, basically. So this here is completely undefended. I think it's because they were, grabbing these resources in preference to actually defending stuff. So there's like big gaps here. There was a lot of work they did to basically make it all work. We'll get to that in a minute, though. But so I guess let's start here. This is Fulgora, obviously. There is not a lot different on Fulgora. So you see the tech tree. So you had recycling, you had your Holmium processing, you had your EMP, your electromagnetic science pack. You've then got quality module 3 is here. Your processing productivity, personal roboports, your lightning collectors, blah, 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 blah. And you see Mark 2 and obviously your mech armor. So I don't think there's anything different about Fulgora. Fulgora kind of changed the least. I don't think they really changed anything. They might have done some tweaks as to which exact, recipes it needed. But basically it was unchanged. And even the graphics, it was sort of, this is pretty much done. So the personal battery changed, but that was pretty much it. It's all kind of as you see in the base game at the moment. Now, this is the personal battery Mark III. As you can see, slightly different graphics there. It was just a recoloured version of the personal 2, and of course now it's got the actual three bits of battery in it, basically. So this was my base that I built. As you'll notice here, I did do the whole thing of wandering around and trying to find, a good place to build. So I was using that approach. And as you can see, it's not massively different. I don't think there's really anything sort of changed, particularly on Fulgora. Although they'd sort of said, obviously, in the Friday Facts about, basically they'd said there's no enemies on Fulgora. I was like, really? Are you, is that definitely true? So I turned up with a shotgun. In fact, it probably, is it in my inventory? No, so I haven't even got the shells on, but I was like running around with a shotgun going, is something going to attack me? Because if you remember these guys, that were in the Friday Facts, and we're speculating, is that something? Is that secret enemies? Is that robots that come out and attack you? Or is it like a turret? And is that how you get Tesla turrets? And no, it's just some big structure. They mark it on the map so that you can get there, because it's one of the, you have to do it, you have to mine it in order to get the thing, and that's why they mark it on the map. Oh yes, this train. I mentioned this. It wasn't me that set this train up. It was, one of the other players. The one that comes along here and goes up here and drops off. That wasn't me. I think I set that. Did I set this one up? I think that might have been me. I think that was him. And basically, these crossed over. And for some reason in my head, like the elevator rails didn't interact with each other. And so I left it that there was no signalling on, basically. And so the trains crashed into each other at one point, and I never actually fixed this other one. So all this concrete is laid down because I couldn't work out what to do with it all. I wasn't really doing recycling properly. I was producing tiny amounts of the science pack. As you can see here, these just aren't getting the superconductors. I was messing about with quality stuff, but as I say, we're not getting. Are these superconductors or are those supercapacitors? Whatever it's requesting. Supercapacitors. So this here is just not enough, as you'd kind of expect, really. It's just the one machine, and it's doing several things. This was like what I did right at the end, was basically set up to build some of these guys, and then I came back to Nauvis and just started zapping bugs with them and having fun. Yeah, it's sort of nuts that you get so much, productivity on anything you build with it. So yeah, that was my Fulgora base during the LAN party. It took me ages to even get started. I think I mentioned in the videos that I basically had to sort of steal all of the platform pieces in order to build a platform to get here. And then when I arrived, I was just manually doing everything, trying to work out how everything worked. And it was literally like a day before I even built something. Yes, and as you see, it's belt base, sort of a attempt at a main bus style. This is where I was starting to build up quality modules. And this is at the top. And because I'd come here with nothing, I was bootstrapping, basically. So you see, I'm making belts, and so one of the other players did eventually kindly come and get the... Oh, right, we got loads in there, actually, then. And I've even got quality science packs. I was messing about with that. What was that all about, basically? Yeah, and this is like my tiny, tiny, tiny little recycling thing, where I'm just adding things on in a desperate hope of, and like using splitter filters of like getting through stuff, and it just not working. It just keeps backing up, and not really functioning. So that's Fulgora. Let's see if we can get this. Oh, I don't know if you saw that as well. There's a horrible lag in the bots, basically, when they launch out of your roboports, personal roboports. And they fixed that. That was one of the things that it's really distracting, actually. But yeah, they would sort of launch out, and then they would suddenly jump to where they were actually going, because it was clearly playing a. They actually talked about it in one of the Friday facts about how they were helping with the lag. I don't know if I can get it to do it, is the problem. If I just go, say, pick up like that. Because it's mostly when you're moving, basically. So if I do that... Oh, there you go. Can you see them sort of... They come out and then they jump back, basically. It's all a bit sort of confusing. Or distracting. It doesn't matter. It's not actually behaving differently. It's just not showing it to you properly. But yeah, nice simple build. And obviously, as you can see, it's not making ammunition. It's not making ammunition because it was way, 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 way better to just send ammo up in rockets. Now this one, they've obviously done a nerf already because it's 100 there and 50 there. I think they were all at 200 in the thing, but certainly basic yellow ammo, 200 per rocket. So an entire stack of yellow ammo. And of course, this was the other thing they did was they just fundamentally changed the stack size, so it's 100. And then in a rocket, it's only, is it 50 for yellow? I think something like that. Might be 100, but basically, these are now like 25 in a rocket. And obviously it stacks to 100. So it then takes up, I've got 640 ammo there, so that would be 7 rows of your thing, and that's, quite a lot to take up for ammo. But it meant that every single platform just didn't need to make ammo there. And when Kovacs kind of saw that was happening, and that's, he was a bit, I don't know about upset, but he was a bit sort of disappointed in us all, basically, just sort of cheesing it. And I think some of these, they did actually start putting ammo production on. Yeah, here we go. So you've got ammo production going on there. And that was kind of a bit of a response to... That looks like it's got a gap in the platform. Just visual illusion. But it was a bit of a... them telling us that they hadn't intended for that to be how it worked. And us all sort of going and starting to do, use it in that way. We got the landmines, and that was like the double cheese. So the walls are way more effective in this. But landmines now blow up your... Well, I don't need to do that, do I? Because they don't in this. But this was the thing, I actually commented on things that people hadn't really twigged, the landmine thing. But yeah, landmines are like super effective. But say they've obviously just recently nerfed that. It's quite quick, this ship, because it's quite small basically, so it doesn't have very much drag. Because that's always been in the game. That was always there, the whole drag thing. What wasn't there is there's an effect now that basically planets have like gravity fields that extend like all the way out to, well, I mean, gravity, technically they're infinite, aren't they? But in terms of having a significant pull on, the platforms, the gravity fields kind of extend equidistance between them. So, should I show you where is it? The Fulgora Express. This was my personal. Isn't this cute? Doesn't that look cute? This is my personal transport that I built. Whereas I say I basically stole the materials to do this by turning off the automation on some of them. But yeah, so we have a lot of ships. This is one of my things. One of my problems is you can see we have a lot of ships. A lot of them are quite big. I say that's my tiny little one, my little cutie pie. But this was like, it's not here anymore. They had one called Space Snail. I don't know why they called it Space Snail, given they stuck on. Basically, none of these are mine apart from the Fulgora Express. But you've seen the number of thrusters they put on it. This is hardly a snail. This gets going, it belts along. But the nuclear version is when they were starting to bring up nuclear fuel and get this going. And as you see, it's got foundries on it and all sorts of stuff going on. It is making ammo. In fact, it's making red ammo and a whole load of gun turrets on it. And then this is just a duplicate of that cycler station. I think this was trying to get, because you see it's got quality filters on it. I'm not sure if that's exactly what that was doing, but there is one platform. Which is it? It's not that one. Iron Curtain, here we go. Where they started basically processing, because this is around Nauvis, as you see it doesn't have any engines, and it's just there to basically make iron. It's like trying to almost answer the question of, is it worth making iron in space and just sort of sending it down? And as it happens, there is a lot of iron here, but it doesn't have any drop requests. There's nothing going on the planet, because I think they basically got to the point where they were like, it's not really worth doing, basically. But yeah, this is like a pointless platform, because it's just sat here, full of iron and doing nothing. Shooting Star. This is the one, and this, if we get the chance to go to Aquilo, this is what, the one we need to use. They really did a good job, I would say, setting this up. But yeah, so this is the one that would get to Aquilo was the intention. Space Needle is like one of the first ones they built. As you can see, I think it was longer, which was why it was called Needle. But you see, it's got this. It's more like a sort of hammerhead shark or something. It's a pretty cool design, isn't it? I think it's quite a nice. I think I need a lot more practice making cool looking ships, but I think that's pretty good. In fact, all of the ones they did, I would say, are quite interesting designs. That was a cycler station. That's what's in mine. I think my one that looks pretty good as well in that. But say you're not constrained. You don't have to stick on all the ammo in this. And cut. We've looked at Shoot Star. Oh, Constitution. So I think this was intended more like a personal transport. For someone to get around, basically. I do remember a constant stream of alerts, because the ships weren't that well protected a lot of the time, and the ones that were making ammo, they're having the problem I was having of it. It's difficult to make enough ammo to last some of the journeys. There's another one that comes up that was actually, I say we could wait for it, but I showed it in the trailer as well, where a Demolisher goes between two gates, and the player character, the engineer, comes down and sort of waits at the gate. The gate closes as the Demolisher goes through, and da-da-da. And that was one of the things that people weren't really understanding what the rules were for Demolishers, and part of that was that video, because people had seen that and sort of thought, oh, well, if I don't attack it, it just goes along its path and it doesn't bother. And then they started, therefore, building close to it. And I can show you that as well. And it would attack their stuff because it was in their territory. And the idea of territory is, here we go, this is it, perfect timing. So you see it's waiting for the artillery to go through. And then here comes a Demolisher. And the implication of this is if if you're not doing anything to the Demolisher, it doesn't do anything to you. But that's not true. Basically, it does attack stuff. And so that's very much a sort of fake video in a sense. I mean, they're obviously all a bit fake. But what you'll see here are these lines, okay? And these are the paths that the Demolishers try to follow. So this is like their pathfinding, effectively. And you will also see the complete absence of the square territory thing. And that was in combination with seeing that video and thinking that they just ignore you, basically, unless you attack them. People were building in those, like, sort of, I mean, this has obviously been expanded. Where's the tungsten that they're using? So this here, they've clearly expanded down here, trying to grab this tungsten, which would have been in a Demolisher area. And so they've looked at this was one of the other things. There was a bit of a bug at the LAN Party, and I remember that there were worm paths. It might not have been the same worm, it might have been different worms, but there were worm paths right around here. So you were like constrained to this tiny little area that didn't actually have proper access to resources, and it's because it hadn't calculated the paths properly. Now they'd literally put them in just before the LAN Party, so that's kind of understandable that it was a bit buggy, but it meant that people were having to it was constant alerts of stuff getting destroyed, and people were having to rebuild because they didn't have the ability to destroy the Demolishers. Eventually they started working it out with landmines and all that sort of stuff, but yeah, so it was quite frustrating for those on Vulcanus. Eventually, as I say, they did kind of work it out how to get rid of them, and so as you see, they've opened it up. But it was a constant thing of, right, well, can I build on this tile? Is that in the Demolisher area, or is that not a Demolisher area? And so that's why they added the territory thing. The actual Demolishers themselves are, as per the main game, there's no real change to them. One of devs, and it had this button here, enemy patrols, so you could turn them off basically. One of the devs did say that the original plan for the Demolishers was to give them an insane amount of health. So they had something like 500,000, I think it was, of health, even like the small ones. I think this guy was more like 500,000 health. So in other words, it was almost twice as massive. And I'm not sure that wasn't actually the Demolisher. I do remember them saying that these were it wasn't just about outpacing the healing capacity. And I'm not sure the healing capacity wasn't larger as well. But it was also about, beating the base health as well. So you would have to do sustained massive damage for minutes at a time, basically. It gave you a lot more resources, though, I think was the thing. So when they dropped, it didn't just give you small amounts of tungsten. It was like loads and loads and loads of tungsten. So killing them was also really, really worthwhile. Cool. So I say, in terms of tech tree for Vulcanus, I don't think, again, there's been any real changes. So it was really Gleba where things changed. As you can see, some of the icons there, bit sort of ropey, but that was the whole simple coal liquefaction. You've got your foundries, your big mighty drills, your tungsten, your metallurgic science packs. Obviously, you've got your artillery there. You've got your tungsten belt, your level 3 speed modules, obviously that belt capacity, and then your research is coming out of your artillery. So as you can see, coal liquefaction, rail support foundation. So it's really, really unchanged, I don't even think, Fulgora or this even had balance passes. They were just, that's it sort of thing. They were happy with them, and they seem to work as intended. It's the next one where things changed. Let's have a look at Vulcanus next then. So somebody went to, I can't remember the people's names, so I'm just going to have to go somebody and stuff. Looking at this base then, I never really looked at this base, if I'm totally honest, during the thing. They've also gone with a sort of a bus type approach. Extensive use of boundaries, isn't it? Interesting they put lots and lots of speed modules in. But yeah, making blue circuits with assemblers, obviously, because I wasn't really exporting anything like a thing. There are actually 2 of them, I think, I seem to remember, working on Vulcanus, so it's why it's a bit more developed, really. I can't see any evidence... Oh no, there we go. There's the whole power production thing. But yeah, there was a lot of bootstrapping going on, so they're making a lot of things locally, and we were all doing that because the base when we left sort of thing was not really even capable of, you know, providing extra resources. Whole belt chain there with green belts, interesting, so they got quite far on it. And then you see producing roboports, and they got actual silo production here. Oh look, quite a lot of rocket silos. Cool. They were desperate to get cliff explosive. But yeah, it's a pretty good base, isn't it? I mean, it's not really doing a lot, you know, but that's not a problem as such, is it? I think these are them putting on... This is like where they died, so this was them like first encounter with the Demolishers, and it just basically flattened them. The world is the other way around. Interest. Oh yes, and this is how this is being shown is different. It's actually Rhaegar sort of put this in, but yeah, so it's all basically rotated 90 degrees. Is all the change that's happened, I think. So basically, Nauvis is like now there, and it's out there. And I don't know what the reason for that was, but yeah, it's still a static model. There's no stars shown in the background. You've got the platforms being, you know, represented there, and you can see how many you've got around each planet and stuff. It's all as it. You know, I don't think it changed particularly, but yes, it was vertical in this rather than horizontal. And then here we are, Gleba. This is different. As you can see immediately are these patches of ore. So the whole bacteria thing was introduced after this version. And as you can see, physically, you know, as in size-wise on the map, these are tiny. You know, you are talking what you could maybe squeeze... Well, it's surrounded by cliffs. The terrain gem was not great at the LAN Party. But you could maybe get, what, like 6 big mining drills on there sort of thing, maybe? And you've got lots of tiny, tiny little, physically tiny patches, which is just getting into annoying territory. Cut stone then, as you can see, is lots and lots of patches, but they're not big patches. Unlike these, you know, every single one of these is millions. In fact, let's do it by this. Show you all of them on the map. So we've got lots and lots of one, and we got, you know, that's 8.5 million. And that's the smallest sort of thing. Yeah, 8.5, 6.7. There you go. That's your smallest one. But that's a lot of ore, you know, in a tiny, tiny space. So that therefore means you can't get lots of mining drills on it. Will last a long time, which makes it annoying. So if you want to do like scale production on Gleba, then you need to be farming up, you know, mining up loads and loads of these patches, which then of course means there's more things for, you know, pentapods to attack if they're going to go on a rampage. If we look at iron as well, iron. Wow, that's interesting. So on this particular, you know, map, we've only got a few copper patches. Crikey. So you got 30 and 23. I mean, these are far, you know, on Nauvis, these are far out patches. 39 million right close and 35 million there. So they're not going to, you know, run out anytime soon. But they're very, very small, you know. So they scrapped that whole idea and brought in the bacteria thing, which then gives you like this positive framing for spoilage. I don't think there's coal here at all, is there? No. And then you've got stone. And here you go, look at that. Is that not tedious to try and gather all that, or, you know, a good flow of stone, basically? Look at that, that's just annoying. And again, I say these then are only small. So this is a tiny patch with a really small amount of stone in it, which, given, you know, you need 20 stone for every landfill, and you're going to want to be doing a fair amount of landfilling, is getting into that balances off territory. It doesn't show now in the main game unless this was added. So one of the things that they, you know, they tweaked while they were getting the feedback was that it didn't show where the plants were on Gleba. So if you were looking for the, your Yamakos or your, what's the other one called, jelly fruits? What they realised is that they needed to highlight them on the map, basically, because people were running around in the terrain and going, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? What am I looking for? Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And of course, then hitting some pentapods who would just flatten them. And it was just like, well, that's not a very optimum experience. And of course, these blend in incredibly well in the whole, in the terrain, basically. So yeah, so that was something they realised. So one of the changes they did make is there was something called Jellium, which is just Bioflux. They were calling it Jellium. Jellium is sort of in the game still. It's a bit weird. But yeah, it's sort of there. I'll show you that. But in terms of the item name, it became changed to Bioflux. Tomato and brain icons are good. Yeah, so that was so that's the Yamako and the jelly fruit basically. The Yamako was because it sounded tomato Yamako. That's sort of where it's coming from. But it led to a lot of people pronouncing it. They weren't pronouncing the yum part. It was Yamakos, as in tomato, Yamako. In terms of the tech tree, it is significantly different. Glebby Pops. There we go. Well, first off, these are obviously placeholder graphics. So this was the jelly nut. It's just like a hand-drawn picture of a brain, basically. And then there's your Yamako. And obviously a tomato, because it sounds like tomato. As you can see, a lot of the smaller icons are done, and then it's like the graphic they use in the science isn't quite finished. Now we had that notification pop up at the beginning. What I'm not 100% sure on is I think this. There you go. So that was the Jellium, which is the or the mash encased in the jelly. So it's the Yamako mash encased in the cube jelly from the brain, and I think that was separate to Bioflux. Well, there you go. Bioflux was made with biter eggs and pentapod eggs. So in order to make Bioflux, you've got to basically harvest both pentapods and biter eggs, and you've got to move them around. You've got no option. You've got to do the biter capture and move eggs around. Now, whether you could then, because you get this synthetic biter spawner, accepted food, and you see it takes Jellium, not Bioflux. Does that mean this is, so it's radically different how a lot of this works. And it can only be built on Nauvis. There you go. So then you've got pentapod eggs, which you can only, I think, let's have a look and see. Here you go. Effects. Pentapod egg made in a biochamber. From a pentapod egg. So you have to feed in a pentapod egg in order to get more pentapod eggs with the jelly and with water. And it's from Biochambers. So I guess you could take some pentapod eggs too, because Biochambers. There you go. So they're locked to Gleba. They can only be built on Gleba. Crafting surface conditions. Yeah, so you can only make them on Gleba and you can only build them on Gleba. So this was this thing I was saying about when you looked at it, because these guys and these guys you can build anywhere. But the biochamber you could only build on Gleba. So in other words, the whole pentapod making Bioflux requires you, and you can only make the synthetic biter eggs and obviously the captured biters on Nauvis. So then you've got to take pentapod eggs, biter eggs to, Gleba or reverse sort of thing in order to make the Bioflux, which is one of your key ingredients still. You're using that for quite a lot of important stuff. It's got the actual productivity 3s, obviously, and the quantum processors. So they required Bioflux, which, of course, I say you would have to have the logistics chain in place to make. And it was kind of like, okay, so you've got to get there eventually. But why would I go to Gleba first when I can only build Biochambers there? You know, I need them for the higher level stuff. I've sort of got. You basically got your Biochambers, which can only be, as I say, locked to Gleba. Which, if you heard me saying that in some of the streams and stuff, or being confused by that, that's why, because that was this. Can craft. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's a bigger list. But I can't remember whether jelly yums are actually in the game still. I don't think they are. I think what was being used for jelly yum has been replaced by Bioflux, and Bioflux has been made, you know, the mash plus jelly rather than the 2 eggs, because it's quite difficult, therefore, to make Bioflux. You've got your nutrients, you've got your pentapod making, you've got your rocket fuel, that's still there, your lubricant, your bioplastic, your biosulfur. So it's a limited set of the things. I don't think that that's a recipe in the game as it is, the wood processing. I think you just get wood from, you know, things, but I might be wrong about that. But then your carbon fibre, your bioflux, and the actual science packs. And I say, so therefore, it's like double locked to Gleba. And if you look at, say, what you're getting out of that, it's not particularly exciting. It's obviously making an intermediate, which is used in your rocket turrets and your rail guns and your toolbat equipment and your fusion reactors and all this sort of stuff. But do you want that, you know, when you, as your first planet? It's a bit sort of like, you know, stacking soda's great, but, you know, you're probably not making it that sort of volume. Your foundation, okay, great, but, you know, it's a limited use case. Again, fusion reactors, late game. The toolbit equipment's just a buff. Rocket turrets, don't need them until you have to go to Aquilo. Railgun turret is very much end game. So, you know, it's a bit sort of great, but it's all end game is the sort of problem, or was the problem. We've got the soil, the super fast soil, which again, it has that mini icon, but here it's just a lump of grass on top of the foundation. Right, any other changes that we talk about there? You obviously got your epic quality still, your heating tower, fish breeding. I see the old graphics for carbon fibre. Your efficiency 3s. And then this whole captivity thing. Got your tool belt, your spidertrons, capacity, yeah, cool. Beta captivity then, as you can see, can you see that? It's probably a bit small, that. Maybe I can click on there, be a bit bigger. But it was a different graphic for the actual bot. I don't know where they got this graphic from, whether they actually, you know, just used something from something else. But it does look very different to what's actually in the game. If you can see that there. But yeah, so you captured the biters, you know, the biterness in the same way, as in you launch these capture rockets at them, but making them was slightly different. And then when they were in captivity, you had a separate biter egg handling research, which would allow you to dispose of the biter eggs, basically. And you have the same for pentapods. So there wasn't like an automatic it spoils thing. It was very much a got to dispose of them in time sort of thing. And so that, I believe, is gone. Bioflux, you see that's just a recolored sulfur graphic, but it's got the thing with the Bioflux in there. And as I say, that's then made from both biter eggs and pentapod eggs, so it's quite complicated. And obviously they're used as well in your fusion power. So in order to do any fusion power, you're going to have to be processing both eggs. So it's a lot more complicated, and this was the other side to it, of like, well, okay, the resources are end game type, you know, rewards and resources, and it's horribly complicated to get all of this stuff up and running. Takes quantum processors, which, you know, require both eggs because of the bioflux need. So yeah, it's also an upgrade from the portable fission reactor. I don't know if that's in the game currently, or if it's a fresh build. The person that came here did so without anything. So they did not have even a landing pad. They literally came here completely naked. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think they brought any ammo with them. So they might have had their guns on them, but they didn't have like anything. I think they had power armor because we were at that stage. But, you know, they were just arriving completely naked, and he got flattened by some, you know, he came across some pentapods, and the pentapods, like, you know, just chase you basically. They do it in the current version. They're a little bit less aggressive, but the pentapods just chase you. So he was getting just attacked over and over again, and we were sort of saying to him, you know, jokingly, really, but it was like his only chance of like defeating them, because he was obviously then trying to get to his corpse, and you know, re-aggroing the pentapods, getting flattened, and and so we were sort of saying the only way to do it was to just almost farm ammo by getting killed just over and over and over again, and just eventually would build up enough ammo. But of course, it would be yellow ammo, so not exactly effective. But yes, so this is the Gleba base, and this is where we're going to have to come and kind of try and fix things. There is a lot of backup and a lot of spoilage happening on this. So yeah, well, there you go. This is an absolutely chock full of spoilage, but then I think it needs spoilage, doesn't it, for that recipe? No, it doesn't. Is it the sulfur one it needs spoilage for? Oh, there you go. So they're trying to recycle the spoilage, but it's only grabbing what's spoiled, basically. A lot of mixed belts as well. So you got, you know, rocket fuel on that one, and also plastic on it, or is plastic going somewhere else? Oh no, plastic's going into the. And then we've got mad, you know, belt weaving and all sorts of stuff going on, because basically trying to do loops. And as I've said, I don't think loops are the way to go. You know, if you want a reasonable time on Gleba. But yeah, so we've got smelting going on. Obviously, this is done with bacteria now. Ah, there's a good opportunity. So I showed this in the trailer. This is a tree and a little lake on a space platform. And the reason for that is that at one point in the game, what you did was you were basically trying to get out of the solar system in a survivable way. So you were attempting to build a platform that would keep you alive, basically. And part of that would be having trees, which would, you know, produce oxygen and recycle your carbon dioxide. So the idea was that you would be building trees on platforms as like building a biosphere. It's a very grand idea. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see a mod do that. But yeah, so that tree on the platform was, you know, one of these videos that they made. That was not in the LAN Party when we played. Would we go to if the platform, had a dome for the trees? Now, yeah, I mean, you didn't really build a surface. It was more, I say, they don't think that idea got particularly well developed. It was just like a concept, and, you know, kind of died off as being too complicated, really. As I was saying earlier on, it's the sort of thing I'd love to see a mod introduce. Oh, this is the other thing I didn't show you, I guess. I have to give myself a job editing this together, aren't I? But what you did in the original endgame was there was no shattered planet. There was, but there wasn't. So there was no destination that was the shattered planet. So what you would do is you would go to Interstellar. Now, I think this was a hang-up. I think I mentioned it a lot earlier on, that the original kind of concept, or one of them anyway, was that you would build yourself a ship that was capable of getting out of the out of the Nauvis system, and part of that it was that it had to be life-sustaining. You know, it had trees on it, so that, you know, you could breathe oxygen, you could recycle the carbon dioxide and breathe oxygen, and all that sort of stuff. So it was a lot more involved, a lot more complicated, a lot more similar to SpaceX as I understand it, though I obviously never got anywhere near that. But therefore, it's had this Interstellar, and the idea being reaching Interstellar was kind of you're now capable of going home, basically. You wouldn't necessarily go home, you know, you would sort of go back again. And there is Prometheum asteroids all around this. So if we look in Factorio, you know, these have been here. But the idea of them being a shattered planet was introduced after the LAN Party, basically, as a kind of replacement. So this wasn't there. There was no Interstellar. This was there. And it was the Interstellar Science Pack rather than the Prometheum Science Pack. And as you can see, these are called Interstellar asteroid chunks rather than Prometheum. But they're still exactly the same. I think the resistances and all that sort of stuff wasn't changed. It was just like a renaming job, basically. So it still represented you winning the game when you got to the solar system edge. It's just that your goal was then this Interstellar. And I don't know if it's got the distances on there. Yeah, so The 4 million kilometres is unchanged. And the idea, or part of the idea, I think, was that, because you've seen, I don't know, if you've been on Reddit and what have you, seen people posting, got to the shattered planet and all that sort of stuff. But the idea was along the lines of how, as well as being like a mega base challenge of how much science can I produce, you had a challenge of, well, how close to the shattered planet can I get? What has changed, I believe, it could just be in how it's being represented, but these charts, like the distribution of the asteroids seem different to me. Now, you may correct me on that, but they're all very, very similar on the Nauvis trips. They're a bit different, but not massively so, between each other. And then the two from Gleba, going from Gleba to Fulgora and Gleba to Vulcanus, they have quite different distributions. Now, as I say, it may just be how they're representing it and what have you, but to me, these do seem like different distribution curves. And then going to Aquilo, you sort of had the rise in the big asteroids, big oxide asteroids, and I'm not sure it does that. But then this here, I think actually in the game now, doesn't it increase, something like that? Everything just gets more and more and more as you go along, and I don't think it did that. As you can see, it's sort of fairly like subdued, and then as you reach it, it all drops to 0. So yeah, I think those have been changed, but the actual like distances and what have you haven't. And it was not a shattered planet, basically. Did the science pack have the same recipe? No, is my memory, but let's have a look. Is that the... So where are they? They're in the intermediates, aren't they? So, it required one metallic, one carbonic, one oxide, one interstellar, and some sulfuric acid. So, nothing to do with pentapod eggs. No, around biter eggs, which is my memory of how it is in. I'll look it up because I've not got it here, obviously. So I don't know. Yeah, so according to Wikipedia, the Factorio wiki, it's 10 biter eggs, 25 chunks, and one quantum processor to make 10 Prometheum science packs. So it's really quite different, isn't it? This is just about harvesting material, isn't it? Just going out there, get as much as you can. You've obviously got sulfuric acid, which you're making from, sulfur, which you can get from asteroids later on, and iron plate, water. It's all makeable stuff on a platform. So you'd be stacking up loads and loads and loads of this. It also doesn't have a, like must be made in condition, which I don't think it does have. No, I don't think it had in the actual LAN Party, when we were doing it there. But that would mean you could just go out and farm interstellar chunks and just bring them all back, basically. Because then, you could drop it down to whatever planet and just make them there, basically. And these, of course, are harvestable in the normal solar system. So you could just have platforms going around harvesting it. But yeah, that's quite different, isn't it? The actual quantum processors, they have Bioflux, and Bioflux is made in a very different way. That used eggs, you see. So this was an intermediate that used quite a lot of the eggs, basically. So in the current recipe, it's only one blue circuit, and it's tungsten carbide. That was the old tungsten carbide, obviously that became the triangle. And one superconductor, one carbon fibre, so that's different to the Bioflux, 2 lithium plates, and 10 fluoroketones, making one of those. And of course, so that was way, way, way more expensive to make one of those. Wow. Okay, so this is then Nauvis, obviously. This down here is what I was doing, basically. So what happened when we started Hallowed Ground, this is obviously the spawn point, but they kind of launched in starting building massive smelting arrays. There were loads of them up here, but this was like a secondary set that they were building. They were building them here, and I was like, look, we need to get some of the basics made. And so I worked on setting up like a proper mall thing and using my usual thing of just keeping building and building and building along a single line. And so this was kind of what my contribution to the party, as it were. And it was just chaos here. As you can see, this is proper spaghetti stuff, and this is what's left, as it were. This is not how it how it started out. And it was, as I say, being fed by, I'm pretty sure they were here, some smelting arrays, and then it was like when it was stone furnaces, it was there, and then steel furnaces here, and all that sort of stuff. What they eventually did, well, they were using right-hand drive, okay, and I've always said in a lot of my playthroughs that I really struggle with right-hand drive. I just can't get my head around it. But they were doing all sorts of mad stuff. They were doing like point to point, but with like multiple trains on it going to different places, which is why you've got a lot of this train track chaos as well, and why you've got this here. I think these are like idling. Yeah, so if they've got nothing to do, they sort of come here. I'm not sure to what extent. Because interesting, they do have interrupts. Okay. But they were basically not really using interrupts either, which I found quite fascinating. And this is, I say, two devs there basically. So, it ended up feeling very optional to do the whole interrupt system. And then the other thing that was really interesting to me is they rarely built with modules. You can see all of these, none of them have modules in. So we're not benefiting from any prod module or what have you. They have kind of been set up so that they can be beaconed and moduled, but they've not got any in, basically. So we're using like pure, resources. As you can see, and this is what they were doing an amazing job of, is they have set up a lot of trains and bringing in a load of resources. But this was being done while we were on the other planets. This is me, and if you can see, you'll probably recognise some of these, me just chucking in solar panels, because we got to a point where we were basically burnt through more coal than we could support, and so I was just chucking in more and more solar panels to alleviate the coal demand. What else we got? Obviously a chaotic bot, chuck everything in system there. We've then got some, I think they eventually then ended up with doing this bus here, because I say this was me. Well, we've got to get a load of stuff built, and then an actual sort of proper bus here. And it has all the sciences on, I think. Let's get the icons on. I think it does. So we've got purple, military, green, red, blue. Where's gold? There's gold. So we've got all of them on the go, and obviously we've got space science, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then this is what we've ended up with after they did such good work setting this up. When I left, when I did my stealing stuff, and just in order to get to Fulgora and explore some of the new part of the game, there were literally 4 silos, and it was these 2 that I was switching to manual and getting to send up stuff. And what I did in order to do that, because I realised that I put a load of I put the the starter pack in, and sort of sent it up in order to build my Fulgora Express, and then I designed this, and then I was literally sat there for hours with nothing happening. It wasn't sending a single thing to this. And the reason is that we only had the 4 silos, and they were just fulfilling demand orders from these rather than building this. And it's one of my things that I think needs to be added, is some way of prioritising build orders or fulfillment orders or logistic orders or something like that, because you can have a platform turn up and through no reason you can understand, we'll get to that in a minute, it fulfills the request for that, even though the other requests for the platform have been sat there for 20 minutes and it's got the stuff to do it. That say it needs platform pieces to build, and they're suddenly fulfilled, and then one turns up and it just fulfills all of the logistics requests for it rather than do that. And then you've then got no rocket parts, and so it sits there, and then another platform turns up, it fulfills all the logistic requests. There's no way of prioritising, basically. And so that was the problem. And so I basically just sort of sat there on Nauvis, hand feeding in stuff. And what I built, what am I looking for, is I built this. So I built this bottom part here, and it was dropping off all of these platform pieces. Because as I say, I sort of realised that I wasn't able to build platforms because we didn't have any platform pieces, because we had one assembler. I think it's probably in here somewhere. And it just wasn't enough, and there was such high steel demand and high copper demand in order to make the platforms. It was tucked on the end, and all of this didn't really exist. There wasn't this production capacity. So I was like, right, well, I'm going to build my own train network in order to build those pieces. And so I, built this here. As you can see, it's 3 wide. I was experimenting with bigger things, but also we'd unlocked elevated rail, so I wanted to have a play around with that. So this is just like a jump, basically, over the top of a bit of cliff, because we didn't have cliff explosive, of course. And I've got this here. Oh, and I need to fix this, didn't I? I forgot about this. It's log jammed because I didn't put in the right signals. We need to put one of them on, and then there needs to be one. The other big thing I did was, well, I'll come back to it in a minute, but basically you've then got a small copper smelting array here, and you notice it does have modules in it. I say because I was just checking them in. There's not all of them for some reason. I don't know why those haven't got them. Maybe the requests expired. But yeah, so this is me making the platform pieces and then sending them back, obviously. But I needed steel, so I built this as well, which is kind of an integrated iron plate and steel build. And then someone kind of realised, oh, Triss is making making iron plate there. Can we steal some of that, please? And then so therefore we've got this like spur over here that drops a load of iron plate off. And you notice I'm using 111 trains. I also set this oil up because we ran out of oil. And so I went and grabbed this oil again. You can see left-hand drive on the rail there. And so we have this weird system. I think there are actually some trains that do both. Yeah, so you see how it's locked in? It's like going in here, basically. So we have some trains that can basically go on one part that's left-hand drive, sort of to, gather some resources, for example. And then they go to another bit that's like right-hand drive, particularly for refueling. So this guy here, this copper patch here, it's a train that comes in and it does this bit of it on left-hand drive. And if it runs out of fuel, it goes up to this bit, which is a right-hand drive refueling thing. And I think it might have to do like a loop. I can't remember. But you see you've got roundabouts in it. And I think, as I say, in order to refuel, it would actually, because that's on the right-hand side, wouldn't it? So it would have to come up here, turn around in that roundabout, go back down again, refuel, and then head back down to the left-hand drive system. So I gave them some quite serious headaches, basically, by having done a left-hand drive system with like lots of access to resources and also stuff that they wanted. I also obviously put these defences in. They were doing a lot of hand defending, basically, and kind of throwing in, like a higgledy-piggledy mess of just turrets and stuff. And kind of doing it in a very much... Obviously, the pollution cloud is serious type of thing. And they weren't really, pushing the biters back out of the pollution cloud and putting in defences. They'd sort of push them out and then usually go and work somewhere else, basically, or do something else. And so they would refill in these areas. You can see quite a lot of these are colonisation type ones. I think that's obviously an original, but yeah. So there was a lot of that going on, and eventually I just said, look, I know you guys are doing the defences sort of thing, but the problem you're having is you've not automated it. So I just went in and just spammed down. I was on Fulgora, and I just spammed in roboports. And this is what I'm saying. It's difficult to like convey it in a sense. Oops. It's more to do with, how I play, as it were, and the things I do. It's like I would never end up with a base of this size where there was essentially, like a lack of storage in an area like this, because this has got, as you can see, lots of smarts on it and it's doing a lot of stuff, but there are no storage chests here, and there's no way of bringing storage chests, I guess, unless... Oh, look, somebody's using a selector combinator. So yeah, don't know. Basically, they don't have anywhere to drop stuff off, so we're just getting that constant alert. Whereas what I would do is just connect it all to the main system, or have it, be a bit more kind of robust in how it's done. Which is then, frustrating, essentially, if you're used to playing in a certain way, and you've fixed those problems, as it were. Untapped copper patch there, interesting. In the way you like to fix them, as it were, and then other people are doing it differently. It's a bit sort of like, well, I don't know whether I should just come in and just do all of this stuff. Look, this is undefended as well. Oh no, that is a wall. Yeah, I remember putting this wall in, actually. I think. Because these little things here, this is me. If you see them, that's me putting them in. But yeah, it's a big base, and I say, you know, I didn't want... Again, you know, it's difficult not to sound like you're sort of crapping on other people, but, you know, it was never that. I remember this as well. I think this is like a personal transport type train, which is not something I usually do. I don't usually do that sort of thing. I just think it's cool when people have their personal rail things. But I do remember seeing this and being like, is this meant to be dropping something? Is it, you know, because it looks like it should be dropping off coal or something like that. And I was like, is that doing anything? And it's like, no, it's just so I can get to the walls. Oh, okay. So you see what I mean? So you get a lot of that stuff when you're playing with people who just play in different ways. And like it's basically all concreted, because one of them was like that's kind of what they do. They just concrete everywhere, and we didn't have the resources for this, which is why you can see it's been kind of cancelled in a lot of places. But they do this really cool path thing. I really like this. This is a lovely little design, and you know, a great way of sort of travelling around the base and all that. Again, you get a kind of a differences in play style is one of the things. Oh, I guess I should show you. They got some pretty impressive nuclear stuff, because this is... I don't do any of this stuff. I've already talked before, but this is like a controlled one, so it's not going to insert fuel. And someone had this as a blueprint. They just they didn't just knock it up, but this is one of those where it doesn't. It's got a steam battery and it doesn't insert fuel until... I think it might be broken, or I turned it off in some way, but it's not meant to insert fuel unless it needs it, type of thing. There was a controller somewhere. There, I think it was up here. There was like a controller, and I think I just deleted that because it was like waiting for combinators and all sorts of stuff that just weren't coming. And I'm not sure. I think combinators just carry over, don't they? But I'm not sure that the things it was checking would have made sense. But I'm pretty sure I or someone just deleted the controller. I seem to remember, so, and obviously I never took down a lot of the old defences. There was an incident early on where I was upgrading some stuff and I completely disconnected our defences, and the bites kind of swept in, and I think it was this, they were able to get into here, so I then just kind of left defences alone, basically, that other people had done. But yeah, so you see we're getting kind of doubling up. The thing I haven't shown you is it called? No, it's not Space Needle, is it? It is platform face. There we go. So this is the old space science in space. So this is a small platform, making space science, and it's using this recipe, which they dumped basically between the launch, between the LAN party and the launch. And as you can see, as it's described in the Friday Facts, it used uranium. So what they're having to... Now, I thought there was a recipe for making the uranium from asteroids, but it doesn't appear there is. So literally, if you want to make space science, you would have to launch up uranium. Now, the thing about the recipe is I'm not sure it doesn't have a, get more out of it research, I wonder. As in that you could improve the percentage, thing. It doesn't look like it is, actually. So basically, they had, you have to launch up uranium to this platform, and then obviously use it. But as you can see, hopefully, yeah, you see it gets recycled basically. So they're taking it back round and putting it back in again, essentially. And I say that's because it gave you some back. So you would put in, let's have a look at the actual thing. You'd get 90% of it back. So it would only use 10% of it. Okay, so if you sent up 100, it would only consume 10 of it, and so it would last you quite a long time, basically. And yeah, they just completely scrapped this because they were like, it's a extra complicated logistical challenge at a stage of the game where you probably don't need it, because you unlock space science, when you'd expect. Oh, well, I can show you this as well. So on these, This was the original, well, I think they actually changed it, but this was the original GUI for rocket silos, okay? And what you will notice is you've got this logistic request section, which you're probably familiar with. Trash slots, okay? All as you'd understand. Rocket capacity, again, was still a ton. That was, as they kept it from the whole thing. But you'll notice it's got this option to do auto launch, but then there's also an option to do research rockets, even though this is set to auto launch. Because if I turn that off, it obviously disables that, but it's not enabling and disabling that button. So that's already a bit confusing. You've also then got launch, which is for when you're manually inserting things. So, these are like mutually exclusive. But auto launch is separate from requests for space platforms. So that's got a separate thing on it. Confusing. And I say if you do launch research rocket, tomato and spaghetti fitting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So off she pops. And obviously it doesn't come down here. It comes down into... Here we go. Here's the landing pad. So I have no idea whether it dropped it down or not. It probably must have done. Because it would have probably gone into the trash slot. So maybe if I turn that off, and we'll do another manual one. Research. But you see it's only giving 10, basically. So it's really horrible amounts of science coming out of that. And basically it was a case of the idea was that you would do your basic ones so that you could build a platform that would do space science. So, you would research your grabber arms and your crashers and all that sort of stuff, build that platform, and it would force you to harvest, to go out and get some nuclear. There we go. So there's 10 science packs been dropped down. But that's cost me an entire rocket to get 10 space science. And of course, rather than sending 100 up, which I think it stacks to 100, I can't remember. But whatever you could send up with the uranium, because you only use 10% of it each time, it's way, way, way more stuff. But yeah, so that is what our uranium is really being used for. And it's why we've got this here and Covrex on the go. The devs were very, in the team were very, you've got to get it set up quickly because, there's a lot of use for space science early on. We want to go nuclear as soon as we can as well. Let's get this processing and ready to go. So they did this quite early. I can't remember why you would have auto launch and not have that enabled. There was some reason. Obviously, travel to space is you going up to a platform. I suspect what that allows you to do is to manually request things in. So I could change these requests, and then when there's a platform that wants 50 pieces, it would automatically launch to them. So it would allow you to have more control, I think. But again, it's because that should dump it out. Yeah. It's all a bit sort of clunky, isn't it? And I say that was the old recipe. It took ages. I could not get my head around it. I basically, when I was busy stealing bits of platform to make my spaceship, I was having to go, what does that, how does that work? What's going on there? Why is that? Why have we got two buttons to do the same thing?